Everyone, welcome. Thank you for coming. Please note that this event is being recorded and it will be available on social media. So please remain muted during the entire event. At this time, I ask you to turn off your video to maximize the quality of the recording. Only the readers and hosts will have video on. To maximize your viewing, click on Speaker View at the top right-hand corner.
Benvenuti a tutti, si noti che questo evento sarà registrato e sarà disponibile sui social media. Si prega di disattivare il vostro microfono per tutta la durata dell'evento. In questo momento vi chiediamo anche di disattivare il vostro video per massimizzare la qualità della registrazione. Solo i partecipanti e gli host avranno il video attivo. Per massimizzare la visualizzazione cliccate su Speaker View in alto a destra. Grazie.
Hello everyone and thank you for joining us today. Bonjour à tous. Benvenuti. My name is Rosaria Moretti and I am the co-host of this event with Maria Pia Spadafora and Nicole Haldoupis. The Association of Italian Canadian Writers is pleased to present the Association of Italian Canadian Writers Emerging Creative Voices, which is part of the Books and Biscotti literary series.
Grazie Rosaria, benvenuti a tutti e grazie di essere qui. L'Associazione di Scrittori e Scrittrici Italo-Canadesi è lieta di presentare il secondo evento dedicato alle voci emergenti della nostra associazione. Passo la parola alla nostra co-host, Nicole.
Thank you. I'd like to take a moment to recognize that we're all in different territories at this time, but I wanted to acknowledge that I'm currently situated on the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Beothuk, the Mi'kmaq, the Innu, and the Inuit. The Association of Italian Canadian Writers acknowledges these and other Indigenous communities who care for the land across the country, and we pay our respects to Canada's first storytellers.
Let's now present our 6 readers. Christopher DiRaddo. Hi, Christopher. Thank you for being here. Nicole Haldoupis. Hello, Nicole, our coaster reader. Natalie Boccia. Hi, Natalie. And welcome also to Annalisa Panati. Ciao, Annalisa. And last but not least, our special guest for this event, Christopher Sisca. Hello, Christopher, and welcome.
Each reader will have 10 minutes at their disposal. Please feel free to type any comments in the chat. We'll give you the opportunity to ask any questions at the end of the event. So with no further ado, I'm going to call to the mic our first reader, Christopher DiRaddo. Trying my best Italian pronunciation. Christopher DiRaddo is the author of the novels The Family Way, shortlisted for the F.G. Bressani Literary Prize, and The Geography of Pluto. He is also the founder and host of the Violet Hour reading series and book club, which has to date provided a platform for more than 250 LGBTQ writers to connect with new audiences in Canada. He lives in Montreal. Christopher, over to you.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, everyone, for this invitation. Lovely being here today. I'm going to be reading from The Geography of Pluto, which is my first novel. It actually is turning 10 this month, so it's a little bit of a birthday celebration for me. It took me 14 years to write, and so I'm going to celebrate these last 10 years. And the book still is finding new readers, so I'm very excited about that. It is a coming-of-age novel set in Montreal, one cold winter, and I'm going to read an excerpt from the second chapter, which kind of introduces some of my characters. I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment on Hotel de Ville in the Plateau, an ever-expanding neighborhood of university students and large families of varying ethnic origin. We moved in when I was 3, a year after my dad died. This was back before the area became gentrified, before the trendy bars, shops, and restaurants opened, before the rents rocketed and the buildings turned into condos. Back then, it was a place where a single mother and her son could find a place cheap and large enough to live in, close to all the amenities necessary for city dwellers who didn't have cars, yet far from the bustle of a commercial downtown. It was also 3 blocks from where my mother's sister Mary lived at the time. She had helped us find the place. It was a tight fit, but we made good use of it. It was one of 6 apartments in an old complex that looked like an abandoned prison from the outside. Its brick was oppressive, bleak and gray, and framed by weathered lampposts and black power lines. The 6 balconies on the building's facade were battered, covered in splintered wood and chipped paint. Tenants' belongings were left out on them, exposed to the elements and a crude introduction to the lives of those who lived inside. Rusted hibachis, broken toys, wet garbage bags. Outside the building's heavy door stood a large tree with limbs that remained bare year-round, save for one branch that gave birth every spring to an animated row of yellow leaves. Inside the apartment walls were paper-thin and water-stained. The smell of cooked foods was buried deep in the carpets. Curries and casseroles Mom tried to mask with scented candles and air freshener. At night, we could hear the laugh track from our neighbor's television, broadcasting the French variety shows. We could hear the flush of the toilet, the run of their sink. The apartment was full of furniture from our first home. My mother had refused to throw anything out. Every room held the old stuff like trophies. Even when the place was clean, it still looked like a mess. Glass vases, ceramic figurines, and handmade doilies crowded tabletops. A ratty ottoman sat on the floor next to my mother's chair. The ottoman had once belonged to my dad. We had had 2 living rooms in our home back then. Mom seldom left the apartment unless it was to go to work or for shop for groceries. She was a librarian at the Atwater Library, working an ever-changing schedule that I couldn't keep up with. When I was young, she would bring home book after book for me, hardcover English translations of Asterix and Obelix, Tintin and the Smurfs. As I got older, the books changed. Judy Blume, Hardy Boys, and the odd Choose Your Own Adventure. I wasn't into these teen paperbacks as much, but not wanting to hurt her feelings, I would pretend to read them, leaving them by my nightstand and advancing the bookmark to mark my progress. I was at an age where all I wanted to do was watch TV. I would stay up at night, flipping through the late-night television shows. The one luxury we could afford back then was cable. Mom had subscribed to the local service, hoping that I would stick around more at the house more. I did stay home most nights, but not to watch TV, but because I had nothing else to do. I was in high school and didn't have many friends. Mom would shuffle around the apartment, nervously picking things up and putting them down somewhere else, making sure the clutter was in its place. There was some logic to where things went that would escape me once I moved out. When she acted this way, fixing and straightening everything, I wouldn't be able to relax until she went off to bed. "What was that?" my mom yelped, startled at the sound of the loud bang over our heads. It was a Friday night in late September, and I was 15 years old. The 2 of us were in the living room watching television. "I hope it's not Mrs. Tremblay," she said. "Do you think she's had a fall?" The bang had been followed by the bustle of feet running from and back to the location of the noise. "I'm sure she's fine," I said. "She probably just dropped something." Still very much a kid, I was sprawled on the couch wearing sweats and tube socks, my gangly feet up upon the coffee table. "Maybe it was Mr. Tremblay," she said, turning her head toward the ceiling. "If he fell, then she wouldn't be able to help him get up." "Or maybe she knocked him down," I said, my eyes fixated on the last 5 minutes of some show. Had enough of his old man ways and took a swing at him with the candlestick in the conservatory. Maybe you should go help him hide the body." "William," my mom chastised, suppressing a chuckle. "Don't joke about such things." "Listen," I said, the bustling now replaced by a frantic scrubbing. "The noise is coming from the kitchen. She probably dropped a jar and it spilled open or something. Or maybe she's cleaning the blood up off the floor." "You're bad." Mom went on with her knitting, glancing at a crossword by her side. She was adept at multitasking and could watch television and be busy with a project or 2 at the same time. She also made long lists of things to do that she would rewrite once enough of them were checked off. She must have been around 37 then, still young and active, but when I look back, I still see her at 50, small and thin, with a graying brown bob and a love of costume jewelry. "So, how are you liking your job?" she asked once the show was over, making an overstitch. I had started my first part-time job working under the table in the kitchen of a halfway decent restaurant on Saint Laurent. The place was located on the trendiest stretch of the Main, popular with both suits and wannabe starlets. I was underage, but we needed the money, and my mom had a friend who knew the owner. All I did was wash dishes twice a week and listen to the cooks talk plainly about the women that they'd screw. "Make any new friends?" "Well, there's this one girl, Angie," I said, still watching the TV as a local newscast chimed on. "Angie? Sounds pretty. Is she Italian?" "I don't know if she's Italian, Mom," I grumbled. Angie was a couple of years older than me. The niece of the owner, she worked behind the bar. She was friendly with me in a way that the waiters never were. She was a tomboy, slim and athletic, with long black hair she kept tight in a ponytail. I never saw her in a dress or anything the slightest bit feminine, just jeans and a t-shirt, or the black uniform we all had to wear. Sometimes, when she'd reach up to get a bottle from the top shelf, I noticed the waistband of her underwear. She wore Fruit of the Loom's boys' briefs, which I found strange but amusing. She was only 3 years older than me, but already she possessed a wealth of knowledge about many subjects: politics, cars, recent music and film, and places in Montreal I had never heard of. I knew almost nothing about our city. I was at an age where I still found myself watching the odd cartoon after school to distract me from my homework. How old is she? Does she go to school? No, I said, she's 18. She works full time. She dropped out when her brother died. Angie hadn't told me this. I had learned it from one of the cooks on his cigarette break. Leukemia. My mom stopped knitting and shook her head. That's terrible. It was misdiagnosed, I said. They initially thought, oh, Will, she pleaded. I don't want to hear any sad stories. I stopped. She went back to her knitting. The local news began to report on a string of downtown robberies, the anchor in a serious blue suit with black, bushy eyebrows. Why don't you see what else is on, she said. Yawning, I began to flip through the channels, looking for something we could watch, when I came across what appeared to be a bunch of men parading around in full-length gowns. My eyes grew wide and my whole body seized. Immediately, I switched the channel, but not before having taken in everything. There were at least 4 of them on the screen, caked up in powder and wigs, belting out some song in a dark nightclub. And alongside them, among the flashing yellow bulbs, had been 2 buff men in nothing but red satin short shorts. Wait, go back, my mom started, keying in on the music, but not the images. Was that a musical? I don't think so, I said, refusing to flip back. And it's in French. I knew that was enough for her to lose interest. My mom may have loved musicals, but the last thing she would have wanted to see was some brash American classic dubbed into French. Wordlessly, she nodded and went back to her knitting. I, however, was curious. I had glimpsed enough flashes of skin to get me wide-eyed and alert. I knew I couldn't go back to the channel until she was out of the room. I picked up the TV guide under the guise of checking what was on and looked for the film's title. Personne n'est parfait, it said, in the time slot with no additional information. It doesn't look like there's anything on, I said, faking a yawn and switching back to the news. 12 anxious minutes later, Mom rose from her seat. Well, I'm off, she said, kissing me on the forehead. Don't stay up too late. It seemed as though it took her forever to get to her bed. I waited until she was in her room with the door closed before I changed the channel. Instantly, I was greeted by 2 men in bed, one dark-haired and fussy, the other light-skinned and sleepy. The sleepy one was topless, rolling over to expose his hairy chest and give his partner a good morning kiss on the cheek. I was mesmerized. I'd missed the first 20 minutes, but it didn't matter. I had trouble understanding the film. It had undoubtedly been dubbed in France, and the French accent, much different from the Quebec one, was not something I was used to. I turned the volume down low so my mom wouldn't hear. I recognized some of the actors, although I didn't know who they were, all but one. I remembered Matthew Broderick from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. In this movie, however, Matthew Broderick played a gay man. I knew the word gay and what it meant. I had been called it a number of times too, in the schoolyard, in gym class, on the street, but until now it had only been a slur, an insult I would try to ignore. This time it was different. The word was real, tangible. It had a shape, and I got to see what it looked like. Midway through the film, Matthew Broderick was kissed fully on the mouth by another man, kissed in a haystack, soft, mouth open, wide and down. Matthew closed his eyes, and in that darkness, I was kissed with him. The kiss set off something inside of me, and in those few perfect seconds, I felt my body swell in a way that it never had before. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I love the descriptions, and they are so embedded and well constructed in the geography of Pluto. These are the 2 books of yours. And I've never been to Montreal, but while I was reading it, I was walking into its streets and places. So thank you. It's a beautiful book, and I really...
You have to come visit, Marika.
Yeah, I will. I will one day. Let's move on to the second writer, Annalisa Panati. Annalisa Panati is an Italian writer and mathematician. She currently works as a researcher at the Centre de Physique Théorique in Marseille, and she teaches mathematics at University de Toulon. She has spent extensive period in Montreal as visiting professor. She is the author of La Venditrice di Sogni, 2008, which received the Valerio Gentile Prize, Storie di donne e di pianura, 2014, and the play Vita e sogni di Mr. Paoli, 2020, staged by the Teatro e Scienza Association in Turin, Italy. Annalisa, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you, Maria Pia. Thank you for this opportunity to share my work. So today I like to share two pieces, the one in English, one in French. The first one is, I don't know what's the technical definition is. I think it's a prose poem, which is published in an anthology of a conference, 16 Conference International Short Story. We were asked to write also sort of a couple of pages about why we short stories, which I interpret on why we write. And so which I like to read to you now. So it's one of the first few things I wrote directly in English, rather than in Italian, than translated in English. So here it goes. Why we short story. I write because I saw you. I was you when you started wondering. Does it make sense, you thought, and so did I. I was a child like you when you saw your parents crying, when you had to leave your country, when your father told you were a mistake, when your war took your brother, when you were trying to wake your mother from a too deep pill-induced dreamless sleep. Anytime you say to yourself, it can't be true, and you try to fix reality with the magic of your child imagination. I was a child like you when the adult world's too powerful harshness of crushed once for all the fragile world your magic tried to hide you in. I was there when it stopped to make sense. Pain gave me eyes and joy gave me ears. So I saw you. I saw from the beginning you and I are walking enigmas, hoping to live long enough to meet someone who would solve us. Could I solve us? I often asked. Pain gave me eyes, joy gave me ears. So I heard you, laughing when a child told a joke that you already knew, finding beauty when no one else does. I saw you staring at your father's corpse with your heart turned to stone, unable to shed a tear. I saw you winning battles you didn't even know you were fighting. I heard you talking to the sun that was never born. I saw you awake me in the middle of the night listening to the electricity wires buzzing. I saw you drinking away the thought that you should have died before your best friend did, until you fall unconscious in the arm of a clueless stranger. I saw you when your eye was caught in the light shade at that time of the day, and for no reason at all, you thought you were finally in peace. Could I solve us? I often ask. I couldn't. I saw you walking calmly and bravely toward the danger everyone was running from. I heard shouting to the wind when no one was listening. I saw you forgetting the child you were. I saw you living on earth day by day in the middle of chaos, making the world a little better. I heard your heart breaking. I saw you loving someone who kept hurting you and leaving someone you loved. I saw you hating people you must love. I saw you stopping him from taking his own life, even if you thought it would stop his suffering. I saw you standing alone in the front of the universe, as small as a grain of sand compared to the galaxy. I heard you pray a God you don't believe in. Could I help you? I often ask. I couldn't, but I could capture you. I let you know you're not alone. Capture that fleeting, elusive moment, impossible to catch as a snowflake in your hands, as a cloud shape, in the sky. That moment, I saw you, the moment that counts. I could capture us with words. That's why a short story. So this was the first piece, and now I switch to a lighter piece. So this is what I'm going to read to you is more at an intersection of me as a writer and a mathematician. I recently wrote a sort of a short play actually a short play of about 20 minutes about the German mathematician Emmy Noether, who is considered now the mother of modern algebra. And I like to read you a piece of it. So it's a free voice piece in which three female scientists discuss if Emmy Noether is a good role model. I will do all the three voices. I hope it will be not okay. And it's mainly try to discuss how her mathematics was. So it's basically bring us the subject of mathematics as an art. So here it goes. I'm reading it in French. Je vais les lire en français. Laura, c'est ce qu'il a dit. De plus, elle était incroyablement maternelle avec ses élèves. Elle était pleine de vie, elle aimait danser. Victoria, mais elle ne savait pas danser, c'était une très mauvaise danseuse. Laura, mais elle s'amusait. Qui préfères-tu inviter à une fête? Quelqu'un qui s'amuse ou la première ballerine du ballet Bolchoï? Je choisirais celle qui s'amuse. Maya, j'ai une solution. C'est une question d'angle, une question de marketing en quelque sorte. Laura, continue. Maya, elle n'était peut-être pas une bonne danseuse, mais elle s'amusait. Elle n'avait aucune technique, aucune précision, aucune élégance. Mais en maths, elle était une danseuse étoile. En tant que ballerine, elle a suivi un entraînement difficile avec des exercices longs et pénibles pour pouvoir danser avec grâce, elle a dû endurer la douleur des pointes, les saignements d'orteils, retenir ses larmes. Mais cet entraînement rigoureux l'a rendue parfaite. Précise dans son jeu de jambes, élégante et fluide dans les grands étirements, maîtrisant toutes les subtilités du ballet classique. Laura, mais parles-tu de son doctorat avec Gordon? Bien sûr, Amy était obligée de le prendre comme directeur de thèse. L'université d'Erlangen lui a permis d'obtenir un doctorat parce qu'elle était connue grâce à son père, mais c'était un établissement très petit, elle n'avait presque pas le choix. Gordon lui a fait calculer des invariants dans les systèmes dynamiques. Elle a dû en calculer 331. Ces calculs étaient fastidieux, ennuyeux, répétitifs, comme un véritable entraînement de ballerine. Mais ensuite, Laura, l'entraînement ne suffit pas pour être un véritable artiste. Il faut un supplément d'âme, du génie. Maria, exactement. Elle en avait beaucoup. L'entraînement rigoureux a permis au génie de se révéler au monde. Complètement absorbée, perdue dans ses rythmes, effrénée de ses pensées, elle vit révolter dans les airs avec une élégance sans égale. Elle voyait ce que les autres ne voyaient pas, la symétrie, la beauté, la structure. À tout invariant correspond une symétrie. Si vous pouvez voir la symétrie, vous pouvez voir la quantité conservée. C'est le théorème de Noether. Aujourd'hui, il s'agit d'un théorème fondamental pour la physique. Laura. Mais elle a fait plus. Elle a changé tout le monde de la danse. Elle a proposé de nouvelles idées et influencé d'autres mathématiciens par sa vision. C'est pourquoi on l'appelle aujourd'hui la mère de l'algèbre moderne. Maya. Oui, elle a apporté quelque chose de nouveau, une sorte de Maya Plitzskaya, Laura, ou bien comme une Martha Graham, une Isadora Duncan. Maya. Ou peut-être une Pina Bausch. Victoria. Mais qui sont ces gens? Maya. Tu étais tellement préoccupée de la danse et tu connais aucune d'entre elles. Laura, c'est pas important, nous pourrons choisir d'autres arts, tout ce qui a créé de la beauté et de l'élégance. On peut certainement dire que ces mathématiques étaient élégantes. Je l'imagine rêveuse, assise dans les tramways à fixer le plafond. Mais ce n'est pas le plafond qu'elle voit. Avec les yeux de l'imagination, elle regarde des ensembles infinis et les organise en structures induites par les mouvements provoqués par la somme et la multiplication. L'ensemble s'écoulant comme une rivière, parfois dans un mouvement cyclique qui se répète en des motifs infinis. C'est peut-être pour cette raison qu'elle a parlé d'anneaux. Je l'imagine organiser ces anneaux dans d'autres structures, comme la déesse de l'hiver crée des cristaux de neige. Parmi ces flocons, elle en choisit un d'une beauté à couper les souffles. Elle l'isole, elle l'observe. Elle invente les mots pour les décrire. Comme un diamant matrosca inversé, où l'on peut toujours trouver une poupée plus grande et ne jamais s'arrêter jusqu'à inclure le monde entier, l'univers entier. Chaque poupée n'est caractérisée que par un nombre fini de couleurs, sauf que ce ne sont pas des poupées, mais des ensembles de nombres, et qu'il n'y a plus de nombres, mais seulement la structure qu'ils créent. Je l'imagine en forger une copie en or massif dans son esprit, pour que tout le monde puisse voir qu'un merveilleux joyau elle a trouvé. Ce sont les anneaux rien. Merci.
Wow, a true mathematician. Precisissima. Bravo, Annalisa. You know, I'm still fascinated at the fact that you are a mathematician and you have such a way with words. I mean, you're a master at capturing fleeting moments, okay, with beauty and intensity. I know some mathematicians, they have none of the intense, I guess, none of the I want to say humanity that you have. But anyway, thank you. Truly, your words and the way you just present them are just a beautiful, beautiful thing. Thank you.
Thank you for your kind words.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's my turn. Now, see, I'm so moved by what you did, Annalisa. I'm like completely falling off here. Okay, so here we go. Let's move on to Christopher Sisca. Christopher Sisca is an Italian-Canadian visual artist, writer, and anthropologist, completing a PhD in anthropology at the University of Oxford on Calabrian gastro-tourism development. He has an MSc in social anthropology, also from the University of Oxford, and an honors BFA in visual arts from York University. Yay! His writing explores Calabrian culture and queerness, and publications include the Oxford Review of Books and the upcoming second edition of Here and Now, an anthology of queer Italian-Canadian writing by Licia Canton. Christopher, over to you.
Thank you so much for the kind words. I also want to start off just by thanking the AICW for including me in this amazing event. It's truly an honor to be able to present my work here, but also to hear such amazing work from other writers and poets. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm going to read two recent works that I've been working on. They're both unpublished. One is a poem, and the second one is my first try at flash fiction. So I'm going to see how that goes down. All right. So the poem is called I Never Came Out to My Nonna. I don't know why I love embroidery. A stitched net knotted on top of ready lace, black on black, glinting refractions of plastic pads and crystalline frames, beautifying the beautiful, a repeat of pierce, hook, thread, tie, showing time and attention accumulate the sublime. I don't know why the masculine, a mask you line, can't allow for attention and time and accumulation of intricate, delicate, complex, tender devotion without question. Christophe, dove sei? My nonna's voice piercing through to the basement floor, hooks my gut, threads and ties my anxious mind. Nana, sono qui all'abbassamento, which is not a real word, but one of our words. I walk upstairs with the men's lace top I sewed by scratch to hesitantly show. Guarda che cosa fatto io. Silence, as laced hands embroidered by time and experience, decorated by her widowed wedding ring, a bracelet, chain, and delicate watch gleam. Her eyes smile as they reflect a twinkle to mine. All right, so that's the poem. And all right, so the short flash fiction. Just sort this out. All right, so it's entitled Ripple. Hiya, Marco greeted the unfamiliar cashier, an older white-haired man sitting behind the remnants of pandemic plexiglass. It was a hot, late summer week when college lawns turned fibrously gold and bookshops like this one smelt more bookish. This was Marco's favorite charity shop, a great selection from the collections of late affluent Summertown residents, now managed and donated by their inheritors. Looking for anything in particular? The man interjected. Oh, not really, just browsing for gems. Where in America do you call home? After 8 years and 2 academic degrees, Marco was still a Canadian assumed American visiting Oxford. I'm Canadian, from Toronto, but I've studied and lived here for some time. Quick to move the topic on, Marco asked, anything new today? 2 large Waitrose totes full of poetry and fiction. A woman said her older brother amassed a huge collection between him and his partner. Now that both had passed, she was tasked to deal with what she called the junk they collected together. Odd to think a lifetime of things 2 people loved becomes the burdensome junk of another. Then again, I suppose that's the fate of all things as you age. It all becomes junk, life, things, everything. Marco shrugged with nothing to say and headed to the poetry section. He loved scanning the shelves, hoping for any queer books hidden amongst them. It was an addiction, collecting them. Mutually not wanting to have kids, him and Pete's queer library was their legacy in a way. A book spine caught Marco's eye, completely faded, except for one part showing its original chestnut cover with oxblood lettering. Ropshire Lad by A.E. Howe. He was familiar with Houseman's work. This looked very old. He tilted it out, its hardcover a now beige, a light beige, with water stains of brown and faded green, like soil and plant marks. It felt like suede, affrontingly intimate. Marco's eyes watered, his forearms and neck pimpled, and he didn't know why. Gently prying it open, the front free end paper's handwritten dedication dated July 1930. The printed publishing date, 1896. Do you find anything? The man interrupted. Startled, Marco answered, yes, I actually did. Heading towards the till, fumbling for his wallet, he lost grip, dropping the book to the floor. Picking it up, he noticed stuff had fallen out, an old postcard, till receipt, and 2 wildflowers pressed together. Sorry, Marco apologized. The old man watched with curiosity. Also, I didn't see any price on it. Oh, the manager probably missed this one. He is on lunch, but can price it when he's back in an hour. I don't have time to come back, unfortunately. This was an impulsive visit, really, Marco said. You know what? The man paused. I shouldn't, but considering its grim state, £3 and we'll call it a day. Who knows when it'll sell again, practically falling apart. He laughed. Marco disagreed silently. The book moved him, and he still didn't know why. Have a nice day, and thanks again, Marco told the man, packed the book and headed out. Walking towards home, images replayed in his mind. A fully written postcard, the receipt. Were the wildflowers Cornish heath and thrift? He only knew this from watching Gardener's World with Pete every Friday and seeing similar flowers during their annual trips to St. Ives. In 1896, it couldn't be part of Houseman's first publication, which he self-published. Marco arrived home. The wisteria around their front bay window was in second bloom, lush with dense green leaves. Foeniculum vulgare standing proud. Oregano in time, a crawling carpet of magenta and white blooms abuzz with pollinators. This was their retreat from the world. He dropped his bag in the front hall and sat on the couch with the book. A batterham of cut flowers from their back garden watched from the coffee table. Book in hand, it stared back with the same confrontational intimacy of a pensive lover. This was an original first edition copy. The charity bookshop man had no clue. Marco opened it, gently collecting the contents, and put them aside. The handwritten dedication read, Dearest Tom, never forget we are as natural as nature itself, as incarnate as the seeds from former blooms gone over. Life only parts the living from the dead. Our souls live on forever. Love you, always in the next life and onwards. Your Archie, July 1930. He put the book gently down and picked up the contents. The postcard was a black and white photograph of a coastline with the text 5 Points Cloggy, St. Ives at the bottom in white. On the back it read, Michael, my love, finally made it. The coast is rough, present, and a comforting companion. The house is what we pictured, leaky roof and in desperate need of re-insulating. But it's ours. You'll love it here. So many queers. We've survived the worst. We've made it to the Greenwood, counting the days till you're here. Your Ned, love you, you know. July 1955. He picked up the till receipt. Gay is the word, bookshop. 66 Marchmont Street, London. Rare edition, £200, 11/07/1989. Marco sat still in silence. He held the two wildflowers pressed together under the pressure of the pages over time. Two different plants, faded but fused into one tangled beauty. He wiped his tears with the neck of his t-shirt, collected the book and its contents. It was 6 p.m. already. Pete would be home. Marco had promised to get a head start on dinner, an easy dish Pete introduced to him, which now became their go-to favorite, pasta with a fresh arugula pesto and charred stem broccoli. He placed the book on the hutch in the front hall beside the key dish for Pete. Marco started dinner. The front door opened. Hello. You won't believe what happened. What a day. Also, how gorgeous is the wisteria? The shuffling stopped. The keys clanged into the dish. Pete picked up the book as Marco chopped the arugula. And that's that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. That was so gorgeous. I have to say I'm obsessed with your poetry. It just, every time I hear you read it, it transports me right into the poem. And you're so good at like it can be beautiful and devastating at the same time. And you're so good at like finding that balance in such a magical way. And I love hearing you read it. And I'm so happy that you're writing flash fiction now too. I think that's a really, really very exciting genre for you. And I can't wait to read more of it. Thank you for sharing. All right, I am going to call to the mic Natalie Boccia. Natalie is a creative soul who loves connection with people. As a wife, mother, daughter, teacher, and now author, her mission is to continue making connections while exploring themes of personal growth and cultural identity. Natalie has co-authored a collective novel, To Breathe Again. It is featured in the inaugural issue of the I Am Unbreakable magazine and is currently working on a children's book as well as a collection of short stories growing up during the 80s in an Italian-Canadian community. Natalie, the stage is yours.
Well, hi there. Thank you everyone for having me. This is such an honor to be here, and I'm so happy that I have other fellow nerds like me that are doing this on a Saturday afternoon when we could be doing so many other fun things. So my story is called Pigeons, and it's a short story that's it's a work in progress. That's not published yet, but it will be coming soon. So it's just about, I don't know if it's a coming of age or an epiphany type story, but this is how the story presented itself. So here we go. It was March, almost spring, but not quite. Her chest felt tight and in discomfort, which was normal for her. Truth be told, she had always felt that way. She had always felt a pain inside. Was it the final remnants of lymphoma leaving or something else that was always there? She wasn't really sure. All she knew was that she didn't want to be sitting in this office. She stared out the window. There was another office building facing them. The windows directly across had the blinds completely closed, sealed. She wondered what was going on in there. Was someone in the middle of a phone call? Was someone being fired, having sex on a chair during an illicit affair with a coworker? The possibilities swarmed her imagination. So you must be happy. The end of treatment is always a milestone. Did you celebrate? No, no one has visited me since this all began. What brings you here today? You mean before I got sick? I have always felt this way, I suppose. If she was annoyed before, now she is enraged. What dumb, stupid questions. The internal loathing towards the doctor was palpable. She had just finished cancer treatments and now was expected to get to the root of her emotional angst while sitting in a cramped office. There was a small bowl of stale candies next to a broken stapler. Again, she stared out the window and saw two pigeons on a ledge. One was sitting there, uninterested. The other had its chest and feathers all puffed out, twerking around while making weird gurgling sounds. She knew when a pigeon wanted to mate. And how do I know so much about pigeons, she wondered. As a child, she would often spend her Saturdays sitting outside on the back steps, staring at the pigeons gathered on the driveway. Some just sat perched nonchalantly. Some danced and jiggled around in circles. One in particular was always twerking and jiggling around. And her father would emerge from the garage with some feed in a bucket and, using an old recycled yogurt cup, throw handfuls of feed onto a patch of grass next to the vegetable garden. He would whistle and smile and say funny things as if he and the pigeons shared an inside joke. She just sat and stared. How did these birds get more attention from her father than she did? He would spend hours outside just hanging out with these ugly birds that were obnoxious, and they would shit all over the driveway. Her mom would curse to herself because on her days off, she'd be outside scrubbing the shit off the driveway. Once, the neighbor, 2 doors down, a lovely Polish woman, called the police because pigeons knocked over her bird feeder. She had a beautiful, dainty, hand-painted porcelain bird feeder, shipped direct by an uncle from Poland. It was pretty, just enough room for a hummingbird to piss in when there was a loud commotion. Oh my God, shoo away, you terrible birds. These birds are ruining everything. She claimed that the 2 monster birds swooped down and knocked the bird feeder, causing it to crack at the base. I'm taking you to court, she screamed. And her father quickly shouted back, hey, you, be quiet, you stupid asshole lady. When the police showed up, she was embarrassed for the officers. Months of specialized training only to be dispatched to settle a dispute between immigrants over pigeons and bird feeders. Their expressions were priceless. Never mind the robberies, kidnappings, and murders taking place. There was a bird feeder damaged by illegal pigeon breeding. The officer had to fill in a report because the Polish neighbor was scared since her father had threatened he would take the bird feeder in the middle of the night and throw it in the garbage. He said it in Italian, but the Polish neighbor understood it anyway, thus prompting her to call 911. The next day, the city officials showed up and served notice that her father was to get rid of the birds. Breeding pigeons was in violation of a city bylaw, section something, blah, blah, blah. Her father was furious, and later that afternoon took it out on everyone else. Once the episode was over, the similar pattern unfolded, and she knew the routine. He would retreat on the couch in an indifferent stupor. Her mother would be at the sink, tidying up, puttering around, busying herself with putting things away, folding laundry, and getting ready for the next day. She would come out of her room and go towards the kitchen. She wanted to help. She wanted to be close. She just wanted to understand what happened. Ma, is everything okay? Stone cold silence followed. Just move, get out of my way. And her father was no better. He would mutter something in Italian, and the house would be silent except for the Italian news and the sound of her mother's sewing kit, a recycled container of sugar cookies, snapping shut. Once she heard the snap, she knew that was her cue, and she had permission to approach. Ma, is everything okay? Here, I fixed your pants. One Saturday, while her mother was at work, she and her brother got in the car and her father started driving. They drove and drove and drove until they were somewhere downtown, it seemed. Usually when she went on a trip like this, her mother was taking her to the clothing store to buy the fancy white knee socks with the holes in them. She only wore those socks on special occasions, like her cousin's communion, or if they were going to see someone visiting from Italy. But they weren't going to that store today because they always took the Dufferin bus when shopping there. So this trip meant something special must be happening because they were driving in the car. Eventually, there were more and more cars and noise and lots of cars honking. The streets got tighter, lots of one-way signs and words that she couldn't read and didn't know what they said. Eventually, they parked and walked into an Asian man's store, and he showed a toothless grin while directing her father towards a cage with a half dozen pigeons inside. A silver gray female and black and white spotted male were selected. She felt so proud as she kept a close eye on the box while they drove home, because it was her job to make sure the lid didn't fall off. Her father was so happy that he had just scored a deal on pigeons. He started singing silly songs and would randomly honk at pedestrians. She was so happy that he was in a good mood. Looking out of the third floor window, she thought about the pigeons her father used to breed, and she remembered quite vividly on this day, that very exact day, when she drove to Kensington Market to buy them. One of the few times he ever sincerely chatted with her was when she sat and watched them frolicking in the coop, especially built for these birds. Sometime later, she noticed one day that her father was really happy. Oddi, finalmente. Finally, the male and female pigeon had hooked up, and two small beige eggs were spotted in the nest. The pigeon coop was quite remarkable. There was never any time or money for anything fun like piano lessons or going to the park or a trip to Disneyland. But to design and build a pigeon coop, watch out. It was a two-story coop with individualized compartments. There was a screen door and a bed of straw and newspaper on the floor. A spout was inserted through a flap in the side panel that collected redirected rainwater into a tray so that there was always water to drink. God forbid the pigeons had no water. She really hated these fucking birds. They smelled and were ugly. And mostly she hated them because her father gave more time and energy towards these birds than her. On summer days, while she sat outside, he would come home from work and ignore her while he walked directly towards the coop. He would make sure there was enough food, and if the birds were out, he began hosing the entrance where the screen door met the pavement. He checked for any holes or damages. We don't want any animals to get in, otherwise it's no good. Yes, of course, God fucking forbid the pigeons would be in danger. He would bring stale bread and get her mom to collect kitchen scraps. He would stand and talk to them through the screen door like an expectant father in a delivery waiting room. And when the day finally arrived, it was as if Marco Tardelli himself had scored a goal. Elation, however, soon turned into disappointment. It was another Sunday morning, and her father's mood was changing. He grew moodier and moodier as the day continued, and he was barking out loud at everyone and no one. She saw him talking to the neighbor next door, another fellow Italian immigrant, and she could tell that her father was upset. What can you do? Her neighbor said, shrugging his shoulders. That's how nature is sometimes. What's wrong? I finally dared to ask. The parents don't care about the babies, and they're being abandoned. I wasted my money for nothing. These birds are sick, and that jerk ripped me off. For the rest of the day, she braced herself for another episode, but it was all quiet. After dinner, she snuck out to the backyard and looked inside the coop. The sun had just set, and it was dark, but she could see by the moonlight the two baby birds. One was on the edge of the ledge, and the other lay lifeless on the floor. The mother had pushed them out of the nest, and for whatever reason, the primal parental instinct had not kicked in for these parents. Even though she detested these deplorable creatures, she felt sadness and pity for the rejected babies. Holding her breath, she quickly reached out, grabbing the squishy bodies and wrapped them in scraps of newspaper. She hid the package in between some piles of wood at the side of the garage. Tomorrow, after everyone went to work, she would bury them in the flower garden at the front of the house. And now, as she sat in the psychologist's office, she thought about the baby birds buried in the dirt. After the secret burial, she had a mind to set out some poison to prevent the male and female from mating once more. What if they did this again? She imagined her father's horrified look upon discovering his dead pigeons, and she felt a sick and twisted twinge of excitement. No, he would just blow his fuse and get angry, and another angry episode would follow. It was better to just leave things be. Eventually, the pigeons mated again, and two babies hatched a short time later. Another drive was taken into Kensington Market, and another pair of pigeons moved in. And eventually, they mated. And sometimes for dinner, her mother would prepare pigeons as part of the meal, usually on the weekend. Their neighbor, another Italian immigrant, would come over and kill them in the garage. She watched in horror while her younger brothers squealed with delight. Her neighbor sat on a homemade bench, unfazed, as she snapped their necks and then pierced them with the scissor. And as the blood drained, she regaled them with wartime stories, laughing and giggling as she placed the lifeless bodies into a plastic recycled wine bucket. That was the problem. We ate everything during the war. But this wasn't wild game during the war. These were birds that were bought and purposely domesticated. And she had spent hours watching her father standing in front of the screen door, patiently awaiting for any signs of hatched eggs. And now he was eating them. During dinner that night, she sat miserably and hardly touched anything. She was grossed out by what she had witnessed and had no appetite. The rest of the family would never eat pigeons, so her mother had prepared a homemade lasagna as an alternative. This was rare because usually the children's requests were overlooked. Different from modern times, indeed. Nowadays, each child gets their own customized dinner request, mindful of any gluten or vegan requirements, but not those days. Children born in the 70s ate whatever was put in front of them, even if pigeons was on the menu. So it was a relief to see the lasagna coming out of the oven. You want to try some? Her father asked as he waved a small piece of meat on a tiny bone towards her. It's so good, so tasty. Madonna come saporita. She was disgusted by what she saw. She was disgusted at his lack of concern for anything but himself. He was mean and selfish and arrogant. And she looked at her mother and was even more disgusted. She sat all pleased and content because her dinner was a hit. Eventually, she started to cry and left the table, but no one came in to check on her. And that night, she could not sleep. All she could think of were the 2 abandoned birds buried in the ground. The next day, while on a bike ride, she saw 2 pigeons circling on the pavement by the water fountain. She slowly braked, stopped, put one foot on the ground while the other foot rested on the pedal. She was wearing her fancy white socks with the holes in them. Tears streamed down her face as she wiped the vomit from her shoes, because it was then she realized how much she wished God had made her how much she wished God would have made her into a pigeon. And that's it.
Thank you, Natalie. Engaging, insightful read and vivid description of the scene, and also I appreciated the conflict, let's say, bond between daughter and father, which I will risk and say that is a recurring partner in Italian Canadian literature. So thank you so much for that. Thank you. And I'm now thrilled to announce our last writer and co-host, Nicole Haldoupis. Nicole Haldoupis is a queer writer and visual artist from Toronto who lives in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. Her first book, Tiny Ruins, Running Press 2020, was shortlisted for 4 2021 Saskatchewan Books Awards and the 2022 Bersani Literary Prize, and is currently being adapted into a feature film by Rock Pictures. Most recently, she won the 2023 Gregory J. Power Poetry Award. Over to you, Nicole.
Thank you so much, Maria Pia. So the first pieces, I'm going to read a couple of pieces from my book, Tiny Ruins, which I don't actually have a copy of, but Maria Pia does. So I'm just, yeah, I'll read a couple of pieces from that. So the first one is called Lava Rug River Wine Mountain. They crawled along a wooden plank, red-orange rug of molten lava bubbling inches beneath their palms. They gripped engraved pillars to keep steady, thumbing grooves. Rug-burnt knees slipped, hands stumbled around large socked feet. Uncles grumbled. They played cards on the table over their heads with cartoon knights and horses, not regular playing cards, Sicilian cards with men holding secret meanings and sword sheaths. Nunnu scratched lottery tickets while Nonna sang shaky songs in the kitchen. The girls hopped on cardboard box lids, clung to each other, searched for a lava-proof paddle. Climbing carboys in the closet, they scaled the wicker-wrapped terrain with no harness in the dark. Wine thief snake threatened to strike, red drops down its throat, straight into its belly. Hearing their names called, they peered through the shutters. So this book, I guess I should mention, is made up of linked flash fiction pieces. And here's a second one. It's called Evil Eye. And this piece is inspired by and dedicated to my zia Santa, who passed away in August in Italy. She very much, yeah, this piece is very inspired by her. Alana had period cramps and a headache. You have the malocchio, her grandmother said. That's why your head hurts. No, Nonna, I'm bleeding from my vagina. Her mother gave her a look. We have to see how many little devils, her Nonna said. Alana sighed. The 2 women sat her on a chair, wrapped a towel around her shoulders, and clipped it in front with a clothespin. Her mother fetched a bottle of olive oil while her Nonna filled a large mixing bowl with water and held it to rest on top of Alana's head. Her mother poured oil into the bowl, and they both stood over her and watched. Madonna, her Nonna said. Her mother gave a worried yet guilt-trippy gasp and threw her hand over her mouth. Her mother walked back into the kitchen to find salt, handed it to her Nonna, and took over holding the bowl. Her nonna poured salt into her hand and threw it into the bowl to burn the evil eyes. There, your head will feel better now, her nonna said, as she and her mother unpinned the towel and then took the bowl and salt back to the kitchen. Thanks, nonna, Alana said, and walked slowly upstairs to take some Advil. This next piece I'm going to read, actually, it was supposed to be in tiny ruins, but it ended up not going in. We took it out during the editing stage, but I still really like it, and it's called Unsettle Me. She said, unsettle me. I asked her to pass me the plates from the living room so I can wash them for later. She said, take me by the hand and show me tomorrow. You always know exactly what I want to see. I said, hold on a second while I clean my crumb-covered counter. If you want to help, that would be lovely. I think I could use backup. She said, tell me what you need and tell me the truth. A cup of coffee and something else, like that dog outside barking at Loblaws, needs untying so she can leap into the lake. You need to be rattled. I said, hand me that dish rag so I can finish up in here. Okay, now I'm going to read. I have a couple of pieces also coming out in the Here and Now 2 anthology of queer Italian Canadian writing, which I'm very excited about. And I think it's out now, so you should get a copy and check out the launch events that are happening. Some of my pieces are flash fiction and some sort of veer into prose poetry territory, like that last one. So these ones are sort of they're from a new project, and they're a little bit of both. So this first one is called Folded In. Tony walked around the corner and unlatched the door to the basement. She held the wall while she climbed down the steps to the laundry room. Tony handed the basket of washed and dried towels to Emma, who placed it on the unwanted basement furniture. White paint peeling off the top and sides of the dresser, drawers empty, the chipping and intricately carved wood now used as a surface for laundry detergent, and the occasional basket, a box of dryer sheets, and something that was maybe mouse poop or apple seeds. Emma folded while Tony switched over the wet laundry to the dryer, divided the towels from sheets, and put another load of dirty linens into the wash, measured out a cup of vinegar, filled a detergent cup full of thick blue liquid to the highest suggested line, and dumped some bleach into the rusted out bleach compartment. Emma folded the large towels first, in thirds lengthwise, then half again until they tucked into a neat little square that could be hung over a towel rack 2 by 2. She pulled out a few pubes which had embedded themselves into the towels. Tony helped with the hand towels, each piece folded to fit together in a way that appeared seamless to guests so that they could easily grab them off the racks and use them for their hands or faces or bodies. Emma dropped a clean washcloth on the dusty basement floor, picked it up and brushed it off before refolding. Tony didn't look up from her own pile, the basement warm and humming around her. They didn't speak, just moved their hands against rough fabric in the damp room, hypnotized. All right, my last piece, which is, I think, a little more on the flash fiction side, is called Fancy Box. Have you ever tried tarot before? Tony watched as Emma pulled a black box embossed with a silver crescent moon out of her tote bag. Emma sat cross-legged on the floor across from Tony, her long hair lit up and sparkling in the dusty sunlight coming in through the window of the room they were supposed to be cleaning. No. Oh, it's really cool. I'm kind of a witch, by the way, but a good witch. Emma smiled. Tony had only been working with Emma for about a month, but had already been drawn to her confidence. Is there anything you want to ask the cards? I'm not sure. Tony's head swirled with questions, but she couldn't articulate any of them. New questions swam in, drowning out the old ones, and none of them managed to surface fully formed. I guess not. I don't know. That's okay. We can just do a general reading and see what the cards have to say. Emma started shuffling the deck. Close your eyes and take a deep breath. Tony closed her eyes and tried to concentrate on breathing. She jumped a bit when Emma grabbed her hand to place it on top of the deck in her other palm. Now try to focus your energy. Tony felt the cards beneath her hand, felt Emma's clammy palm holding the deck from below, and visualized their energy swirling all around their hands. Greenish blue dancing with a hint of purple now and then sort of smoky looking, kind of like the Northern Lights. Tony peeked one eye open to see if what she was imagining was really happening, even though she knew it wasn't. Then she glanced her one eye up at Emma, who was staring at her. She closed it quickly and pulled her hand back, trying not to smile. If you don't take it seriously, it won't work, Emma said. Tony took another deep breath and closed her eyes again, forced her smile away. She tried to at least pretend to focus, but couldn't help wondering if it was just a pile of cards in a fancy box. Emma shuffled again and placed the cards on the floor this time, the dented soft wood of the empty guest room around them, waiting to be vacuumed. Tony opened her eyes a little and stared at a stray pubic hair poking out through a gap in the floorboards, twinkling in the sun. She wondered how many people had been naked in this room, how many bare feet on this floor, how many were still alive or were buried here, maybe on the grounds, in the city, or somewhere else. Tony hesitated and Emma took her hands, both of them this time, guided them down onto the deck and held them there. Tony closed her eyes again. So just try to focus your energy, clear your head, and just think about your energy flowing into the cards. Tony felt the pile of cards sturdy against the floor, felt them breathing with the house, her pinkies touching the chipped wood on either side and Emma's hands on top of hers. The house felt full, even though it wasn't. She breathed in, let out a sigh, and felt a distinct shudder through the floor. She opened her eyes and pulled her hands away, looked at Emma to see if she felt it too. What? Emma asked, annoyed. Tony blinked. Nothing. Emma rolled her eyes. Fine, if you're not going to take it seriously. Tony watched the cards disappear from the floor as Emma shoved them back into their box and then into her bag, dust floating up as she unsettled the items in the sunbeam. Tony held her hands still above the calm, unmoving floorboards. Thanks.
Thank you, Nicole. That was fantastic. You know, just listening to you, you have this great ability to describe so meticulously, like just so descriptive of the most mundane activities, such as doing laundry, or even just noticing, like, you know, realistic scenes in a way that you're not showing any disgust or anything, like, you know, mouse poop or pubic hairs that you have mentioned twice. Thank you for the mental image. But the point is that you're just extremely observant, and you do it in such a wonderful, very wonderful way. Anyway, wonderful writing, and thank you for sharing these beautiful pieces with us. Even the fact that you went to go take an Advil, poor Nonna. The fact that, you know, like many Italian Canadians or any children of immigrants, you know, will respect that culture, even though, as you said, went upstairs to take the Advil. So excellent, excellent observations. Thank you. Now, we've arrived at the moment that it's time to ask some questions. So we have to be mindful of the time. We only have 20 minutes left. And so if you would like, kindly just turn your video on, but perhaps put up your hand first, let yourself be seen. If you would rather not speak, feel free to put your comment or rather your question in the chat, and Maria P and I will get to it. Okay, so we'll open up the floor now to everybody. And Christopher, I see you come first. So there you go. Go ahead, ask.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for the wonderful readings. I really loved hearing everyone read. I guess my question is for Nicole and Christopher. Just you both talked about flash fiction, and I'm kind of curious, like for both of you, what inspires you, I guess, about flash fiction writing? And you know, I don't know too much about it also, and I'm just wondering, are you working within any kind of parameters when you're taking on these type of like projects?
Yeah, I guess one of the things that I really love about flash fiction is that you can really kind of hone in on like a moment or like a scene. I mean, it does sort of still have to be like a well-rounded story, but you can really focus on like, you know, those details that I don't know, you might not be able to in other forms. I also really like, you know, the idea of just sort of chipping away at something until it's this really condensed, like compact little story. I find that really fun. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, so actually the motivation to do the piece Ripple was I just saw a call for a flash fiction prize and thought I've never written one, and I think that would be really like creatively interesting to push myself to think in that way. But yeah, similar to what Nicole put, I think it's very much, it allows you, you have that opportunity to like set a vignette, which I think in the poetry that I write, I often do that, but flash fiction allows you to build a bit more. But it's still, it also forces you to think like very intentionally on like what themes or messaging you're getting out, because you have such a small space to convey it. And so, yeah, there's a lot of editing that goes through to shave it down, but I think it's a really exciting creative challenge because it makes you think of your writing in a different way. So
Just a little follow-up. Are you like working under like 1,000? Like, how would you define it? I guess it has to be under 1,000 words or another type of number?
yeah, I basically followed the guidelines of that competition. I think it was maximum 1,000 or 2,000. I think it was 1,000, but yeah, so that's kind of typically, I think, for flash fiction. Short fiction, I think, can vary a bit differently, but I don't know if Nicole, you want to add anything.
I guess, yeah, I was gonna say, I guess, yeah, different places have different sort of guidelines for it too. I know under 1,000 is a pretty common one, or like under 750 sometimes. Mine are usually really short though, like under 500, like sometimes even smaller. Depends. I think it depends on the story. Yeah.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Chris.
Does anybody else have a question or a comment? Perhaps a wonderful compliment, maybe? Yes, Nicole, is that you? Do you have a comment or you compliment? Yes, please.
Yeah. I have a question I guess this is sort of for probably more Annalisa and Chris Sisca, but also if Natalie and Chris D want to answer, that's cool too. So just because you two both read in two different genres, so I wanted to ask you, I guess if you want to talk a little bit about that, like what do you find, what are some things that you like or things that you do differently when you're working in those different genres that you read in today?
Who would like to field that question first?
I can quickly go first. I think so in terms of poetry, I'm very much in a stage because I've been writing, I guess, creative writing in a very like intentional way for the last like 5 years or so. So I feel still kind of green and fresh with my relationship to poetry and prose. And so I think for me, it's exciting and it's more exploratory. So I'm looking at different styles, whether it's prose poetry, free form, or other rhyming structures. I like poetry in the sense that you can have rhythm and sound, and you can be a bit more playful with that. I think tempo in delivering a poem. Then I guess the fiction that I was reading, but again, I feel quite green in my exploration of the two genres, but it's nice to do different genres, I think.
Well, I'm not sure how to answer to your question. So I feel like my process is always the same. Just the result, is maybe different. So, like if you paint a painting, you always have your style, but it's a different subject. So you use different colors. There are some situations, maybe in poetry, where I convey in a more compact way deep feelings, and the second piece I read was more about mathematics, so it was lighter and was yeah, but I don't, to be honest, the true answer is I don't know. I feel like I'm always writing the same way. I just apply to different, I just have different constraints according to the subject.
Annalisa, I'm sorry, before, if I could just cut in, because actually your question, what you answered would fit in with Darlene's question in the chat. Darlene, would you like me to read that, or?
Oh, I can say it. Annalisa, sorry for misspelling your name. It has two N's. I wondered how you decide which language is the creative a fit for your particular idea when you start. For example, I've often heard that French is more abstract than English, and it was interesting that you were writing dramatically about a mathematician. So I don't know, I'm speculating. How do you just start in one language, or do you intuitively?
So far, I haven't really wasn't able to do what you said, like to choose the language. So usually I write in Italian and I translate according to the opportunity I have. So if I have to read an event like this, I try to translate in English, or if I have the opportunity. And I have hard time writing in French. I've tried, like the piece I read to you today was my first try to write something directly in English. And so I don't know, but I don't know, I felt like doing it. I don't have a motivation. Was this I had to compose for this anthology. And so I took the opportunity to try to write directly in English, which is not obvious for me. And that worked pretty well. I always need the help of some reviews from native speaker, so I'm not. And for the French one, for the French I read to you, I could collaborate with other mathematicians for translating in French and polish the French translation. Otherwise, I am unfortunately completely sure of myself only in Italian. And I try to start to write directly in English now, but with the help of someone would willing to review my writings.
Well, brilliantly conceived and flawlessly executed.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Nicole, you wanted to finish that question. Please go ahead if you like, while everyone else is thinking. Yeah.
Sure. I guess does Natalie or Christy have anything to add? Do you guys write in different genres too? No?
No, not presently. So yeah, I don't, yeah. I'd love to. I'd love to be able to write poetry, but it's at least not in my wheelhouse right now.
I've written many poems, just nothing's published. I like both genres. It just depends how the story decides to come out, whatever emotion or story or whatever character wants to reveal itself. But I love the short story. I think it's harder to write a short story than a longer story, I'm finding. So I think short stories are so powerful. But I love poetry too. So I love it all, to be honest.
Wonderful.
Awesome. Thank you.
There's a question. Thank you very much. There's a question by Daniel. Please go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to say I really appreciate any time somebody writes about Nonna, because I look at my nephew, he's 2 years old, and he's really going to have no contact with that culture and that generation. So, sort of preserving these little bits of that generation in our writing is going to be very important. So thank you for that. I was just wondering, as someone who's new to this and just trying to get out there, have you found that your Italian identity has helped you in your writing journey? Has it held you back? Like, is it something you put up front? Is it something you push into the background? Any thoughts on that would be helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, those were great comments. Yeah, who would like to answer? Who would like to comment anything? Any of the writers want to say something to Daniel? Anything?
Sure. Yeah, it's a really good question, Daniel. Thank you. I think I'm still trying to answer that question, honestly, myself. I think for the like my last name says I'm Italian right away. You know, it's not like I'm gonna, no one's gonna be surprised. So I don't know if it's like held me back. I think for the longest time when I was younger, I didn't want to have to write about Italian culture. Like I think that was where I was like I was afraid that I would be pigeonholed or that like I would need to. So I think at the beginning of my kind of career, I didn't want to write about it. However, that, I have in the last few years kind of completely did a 180 on that. And, this organization has been really wonderful, I have to say, to know that there is an association like this out there that is so supportive of Italian Canadian writing. I know for myself, I seek out these voices now, like, so I'm wanting to hear more about what other writers have to say. So I'm hoping that other writers would feel the same maybe about my work. I don't feel like I've come up against any kind of like roadblocks, I would say, because of it. Probably just more opportunities than roadblocks, I would say.
Thank you so much.
Any of the other writers would like to add something else in there? Yeah, and Christopher, I can understand. It was funny when you mentioned how you did not want to be pigeonholed as being Italian Canadian. How many of us were just nodding our heads, with the same experience, and even the fact, if I could just quickly say, Daniel, back to the nonna. In your stories, many of you had included some of their words, their language. It was almost like you were channeling your nonna right at that moment. And I don't know if maybe it's something that we'll say the newer authors who are writing about this topic, the dialogue becomes a lot less, as opposed to more established writers who are giving more voice to their nonnas or their nonos. So, I mean, I don't know if this is just me making a small observation, but I still think, even though we're talking about 2-3 generations, it's great that there still is that little bit of dialect in there. And even watching some of you authors who you would actually impersonate them. So I don't know if any of you have a comment to that, or.
I just want to add, yes, Daniel, I think that's wonderful. And the other story that I was torn between, I wrote a story about when I was growing up. I spent all my March breaks and PA days, summer breaks, was with my grandparents. And now when I'm planning March breaks, PA days, I hear other parent friends, now there's all these camps, like art camp, soccer camp. We didn't have camps. We went to Nonna's house. That was my summer PA day. So I actually have another short story written. Maybe I'll share that in the future about my March break with my grandparents. And I'm very grateful that they're both still alive. So I think I'm trying to, I don't want to rush, but I want to get down as much as I can while they're still here so that they can celebrate it with me. But I also want to preserve it, because as that generation is dwindling and they're getting older and their memories are fading, I think it's more important than ever we preserve these stories, because there's just so much richness. And I don't think we should be limited to our Italian identity, because we can relate to all the other cultures, because everyone suffers with gender roles, misogyny, and guilt, and all that, and religion. That's everyone can relate to that. So we should celebrate our Italian identity. I think we should be very proud of it. I know my grandparents will be very proud of it. They're very proud of what I'm doing today, although they have no idea what I'm doing, and they have no way of accessing this Zoom, and they don't know how Zoom links work, and they think this is going to be on the Omni chat. This is not going to be on Omni, so I don't know what, so, but they're very proud and they're very happy that we're doing this. So I just wanted to share that. So there is a story called March Break Camp coming, Daniel. So you must be reading my mind or something. I don't know.
Love to read it. Thank you so much.
Hi, this is Bruna. Hello.
Hi, Bruna.
Can anybody hear me? Hi, guys. I wanted to talk a little bit about dialect, ladies and gentlemen. They are alive. You go to Italy and they're still talking dialect. I write in dialect. Every year I go to Italy. If I don't go there to where I was born in Rome, and my dialect is Roman, and I will never give it up. And when you go to Italy, it's still very very prominent. It's done every day. They still speak everyday dialect. Of course, when they have to speak Italian, they'll speak Italian. But it is important. This is why I created L'Eco dei nostri dialetti. And this is now the 3rd year, or is it the 4th? I can't remember. But we get together and we submit poems, and we have them in Italian and English and the dialect. So that's all I wanted to say. It's alive. It'll never die. Dialects will never die. They'll never die. That's all I can say to you.
And Bruna, you're definitely correct. I was just indicating more in the level of 3rd generation Italian Canadians who weren't necessarily, what's it called, exposed to the dialect in great quantities, right? So these are just little snippets, but definitely. And now, before I forget, Rosanna has waited ever so patiently. Rosanna, I have to give you the mic, but thank you, Bruna, so much for your comments. Yes.
Okay. Hey, poor Rosanna. Where is she? I want to see her.
Okay, Rosanna, go ahead. Mic's up to you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks to all the readers today for their wonderful evocative readings. I just want to ask a quick question, because the responses could take a long time, but just right off the top of your head, who or what inspired you to write?
So I may start with I say that what inspired me to write is what I read. So the piece I read was basically about why I write. And so if I have to summarize it in other words, I would say the difficulty to express in ordinary life many of the feelings that we have and are very deep in us and are very important, and that the things give sense to life, but we cannot express it in ordinary life. We can, in the routine day, we are all running because we're late for work, we have so many deadlines, and I can express that through art and several arts, but including writing. And who encouraged me to write? So I, as you know, I'm a mathematician, so I was not following that path at the beginning. So I'm very thankful to everyone who encouraged me to believed in me. And I also like to take this opportunity to thank also this association who also always supported me and encouraged me to continue my work.
Thank you, Annalisa. It's always a pleasure to have you do readings for us. Any of the other authors today would like to answer Rosanna's question? Try to be a bit brief, so at least we can squeeze in another question or two. Who's next? Yes, Christopher. Christopher S.
Yeah, I just was going to say, my father's father, my Nono Antonio, he wrote poetry, and it was only until he passed that through my dad going through all of his items, he found a lot of poetry that he didn't know that he wrote. So posthumously, I kind of started to understand one of my grandparents in a more creative sense, which I didn't really appreciate growing up. Also, as a queer Italian Canadian, writing, journaling was always a part of everyday life, when you're trying to work out things, express things and understand yourself. So I think that then translated into me thinking of more of an actual creative practice with writing. So
if I can add to that just quickly too, yes, Christopher, I never thought of it that way, but I journaled also, and I think that really kind of created the pot from which I pull everything from. And I think my city is also a big inspiration for me, my community around me. There's a really great writers community here in Quebec and Montreal, English language writers, and they've been very, very supportive, and I don't know what I would do without them.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Natalie, would you like to add anything, or Nicole? It's now or never. Okay, you sure? Okay, I wanted to quickly just take the attention here to Vincenzo Pietropalo, who, Vincenzo, you've put such a lovely comment here. Would you like to read that out for us? Oh, Vincenzo, you're muted. You're muted. Wait, don't unmute yourself, please.
Oh, okay, sorry. I was just typing a correction because I had realized trying to type very quickly, I made a big mistake. as Pier Pasolini once said, a language is a dialect with an army behind it. Because all dialects are languages, and the dialect is, my dialect is my mother tongue. How my mother spoke to me became my mother tongue. And then eventually I went to school and learned Italian. So my mother tongue was a variation of Calabrese, and then I learned Italian, then I learned English, etc., etc. So, the difference is that a dialect is not supported by a national, a national army or institution. It's just, and usually dialects are oral, they're not written, but they are so much more beautiful. I mean, the expression I tried to translate into Italian, parla come ti ha fatto tua mamma. Actually, it's parla come ti ha fatto mamma. Right? And when you say that, then it becomes all of a sudden, anyway, what a privilege to listen to all these stories. I have to say that I was moved by all of them. Natalie in particular took me back to my own childhood when I used to, we used to go to Kensington Market and buy pigeons with my mother for food and buy chickens. And, we walk 10, 15 feet behind her as we carried them home. And how I once caught a pigeon on the rooftop, and I went to show it to my mom. I was so proud of this beautiful pigeon. And my mom immediately slaughtered it for food. So that's one story which I have never written, which I think now you're inspired me maybe to write. Thank you.
I think we're going to have to, sorry, Natalie, did you want to respond something to Vincenzo quickly?
Yeah, oh, thank you, Vincenzo. Yes, I know pigeons seems to be a common theme in a lot of Italian immigrant story. I don't know. But even now, if I see a pigeon, I'll look and it'll like I could write, several stories just on a pigeon. But yes, thank you for sharing that. Very kind of you.
I think we'll have to probably organize, Maria Pia and Nicole, another readings for pigeons and dialects. Maybe we can do something really creative like that. I know I'm going to be the mean person. I'm sure people have more comments or questions, but we have reached the end. But the reason also is because I would like to, if you'll allow me, to just make a few quick announcements. So I just wanted to say that I would love for you to please mark your calendar. We've got two events that we'd like to talk about. First of all, we're thrilled to announce, as you know, the 19th Biennial Association of Italian Canadian Authors Conference, which will be held this time in Toronto on September 27th and 28th at York University and the Columbus Center. Okay, it will be quite a lovely event. And in fact, we've got Vincenzo Pietropalo, whose photograph is there, but he will also be our keynote speaker. It promises to be a wonderful event, and I know many of you will want to take part of it. So this is just, please note this date. We're excited about it. And also, just quickly, we have a next event will take place on Saturday, May 11th at 1 p.m. and it's called The Craft of Description, a workshop online led by Anna Romano, who is with us today. Anna, just smile and wave for us. And it's in collaboration with the Writers Collective of Canada. There's still 5 spots left. So to reserve it, just contact Anna Romano and her email is there. Thank you, Maria Pia, for putting that in. And please also visit our YouTube channel, part of the Association of Italian Canadian Writers, and where you can catch up on our latest events. There was also the Established Writers event that was just recently put out, and I believe now the second level of the new book that's coming out, the readings with the Nicole, help me out with the title. I'm losing my mind today.
Oh, Here and Now,
That's right. So the Here and Now second edition is coming in. So
yeah.
please check out that website. Okay.
Yes, thank you, everyone, readers and friends, for joining us today. Thanks to my co-hosts, fellows, Rosaria Moretti and Nicole Haldoupis.
Association of Italian Canadian Writers, which is run by a group of volunteers. We welcome donations at any time. Go to AICW.ca to donate and find out more about our activities.
Grazie a tutti.
Thank you.
Merci. A bientôt.
Thank you.